Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
-6 and 18.
Yeah.
Is that someone's stomach, or I'm just
No, that's
a truck.
We're in my office.
No, I know.
The car's outside. We're gonna hear that, and then we'll probably hear the bell downstairs start ringing out some song.
But I like the bell. That's charming. But yeah.
But yes.
Wait for the slight humming to go away. I saw the video of you on Instagram, Seth, where you tossed the pot of water up in the air.
Oh yeah, it was -27 when I got up with the wind chill that day.
Yeah. I really don't miss that too much.
No, no. I've never felt it this cold.
I don't see why all of you guys don't live closer around these parts where it's just such boring weather all the time. It's going to be 63 here today.
Adam said it was like 60-something in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, it's warm in Tennessee, too.
And all that sticky humidity.
Yeah, it is still like wet outside, even when it's cool.
Everybody always pitting out all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Okay, I got a break in the truck, so I'm going for it. On this edition of Into the Fray, I have Small Town Monsters I'm just kidding. I wish I could leave that in.
Please leave that in.
That would be amazing.
Maybe I will. I could just, if I just take out the F, then it's technically not even the word, right? That's
just put a beep.
Yeah, just put huge.
Okay, I'll leave it.
That would be hilarious.
I think it's a great intro.
I like it.
So I have Seth and Adam on with me, and we are going to talk all about the 3 upcoming films from Small Town Monsters. And in case you didn't know, so far from Small Town Monsters, Minerva Monster, Beast of Whitehall, Boggy Creek Monster, The Mothman of Point Pleasant, Invasion on Chestnut Ridge, The Flatwoods Monster, On the Trail of Champ, and The Bray Road Beast. Welcome, gentlemen, to Into the Fray.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, Shannon, thanks.
Hi. Yes, quite the list there, guys. And of course, for anybody that's listening right now, just go to smalltownmonsters.com for various ways to watch that entire list of productions that I just spit out there. So, anyhow, I don't really know how to kick off a conversation with you guys because usually it's kind of just like we're just jabberjawing and being goofy. So
that's what's so weird about like any time I interviewed Lyle for Monsteropolis, and it was the weirdest thing because like I'm just used to talking to Lyle and to have to be like, okay, now we're going to hit this topic and that topic and stuff like that. So I personally believe that we should just approach this like we're all hanging out and having a conversation.
If even a quarter of our conversations were taped from the truck, it would be a comedy show. It was we had a lot of fun, didn't we?
Yeah. We were talking. What interview were we talking about? How uncommon it is for us all, because none of us had met or hung out like in this group prior to that trip. So it was weird for us to do that. We should probably mention, like, we're just jumping right into talking about something.
Look, people just need to catch the hell up. You know, we don't have time to go back to A. We're already on W. So.
I mean, okay, so like setting the stage, we were in December. Adam Duggan, who's joining me, and Shannon and Brandon Dalo drove to Adams County, Ohio, to go out squatching with the Night Stalkers. And Adam was really excited. He wore his Little Squatcher t-shirt.
I did.
Yep.
It said Lil Squatcher, L-I-L Squatcher on it.
Yeah, it's my favorite one.
And we went out for a night, quote unquote, night op with the Night Stalkers. And but the point I was making is like for the four of us to get together and then for it to almost immediately be as comfortable and hilarious as it was, I don't think that's terribly common. Like that's how I am with Zach and Jason, but I've known them since we were 16 years old, so it's not normal for a bunch of people that don't know each other that well to get together and then just have a blast for like 2 days.
No, we were actually having so much fun that at one point there was a tick in the truck and it alighted down on your jacketed arm, and he was trying to crash the party too, which was not cool, but you know, that's how
and
much
I was
fun
trying
we were
to
having.
crash the truck while screaming for you to kill it.
Kill it with fire, you kept yelling. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. We're in the truck. We're driving.
We're in a truck, Breedlove.
We're still unclear as to where that tick came from, considering it was the middle of December and it was freezing cold outside.
But not our problem anymore, though. Somebody else's problem.
No, someone else's deal.
Oh, that little dead.
Did you kill it? I don't remember.
Oh, I killed it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonzo. I put it, I think I squished it properly and put it in a paper bag at my feet.
Okay, so...
Oh, that's what you put your snacks in, wasn't it, Seth?
Pretty much, yeah. It was the same one. I handed it back to him at some point later. I'm like, well, you want your chips now?
That trip, too, it was pouring rain the entire time. We were, like, on our way down, and then it rained into the night, right? Into the first night we were out. Are you going to play those sounds on the show at all?
I didn't know if you wanted me to.
Yeah, I think you should.
Okay.
So we recorded, and I think you guys should tell this part of it, actually, because I wasn't even down where you guys were when that happened. Why don't you guys talk about the sounds?
Yeah,
I'm just going to sit here.
I'll stop talking and let Adam speak here.
Oh, no, I just, so we were in Adams County with the Night Stalkers, and I think, Seth, had you moved up in front of us? Had you walked?
I went up the hill, like further up the hill with Jeff Byers, and we were standing on the hill trying to see if we thought we were looking at red eye shine off in the distance.
Yeah. So it was Brandon Dalo and then Shannon and I, and we were down on the trail, just kind of talking in low voices, just listening and kind of waiting for Seth to come back, and so we heard something that I think initially we thought may have been one of the Night Stalkers making a call on down the trail. I didn't necessarily think it sounded like that, but Brandon was convinced that that's exactly what it was. Shannon and I had made mention that it could have been a dog, but it would have been a really, really large dog. Anyway, so we ended up catching that on I think, Shannon, you had the recorder going? Was that your recorder that got it really well?
Yeah, my phone. I happened to not have it in my pocket because it wasn't really too damp out, so I just left it out, which is
right.
It's always annoying to do that, but that way it's not getting stomped on
not
by
muffled
something
or
else.
whatever. Yeah. And it was so after going back and listening to it, you know, to me it doesn't sound like a dog. But that's just me. I think Brandon maintains that it was a dog, and I don't think I know where you are on it, Shannon.
I don't know, because it's not like we were out in literally the middle of nowhere.
No,
there was houses around, and I will say though that at the very beginning, and I know that I think our ears picked it up a little bit better than my recording did, but there was an initial like whoop, and then it did the second more powerful sound that I actually. Right. Everybody can hear if I can find the Seth, this is all your fault, because you know at some point in our group text message box you were like, I can't, it's not working, we have to go to a different message box, and I'm hoping that I didn't delete that one.
Do you want me to? I might have it.
I think I still have the other thread too.
Okay, yeah, maybe if one of us can find that. I'm looking for it right now because I can just feed it right into the Yeti. It'll pick it up actually pretty good.
Okay, so I'll pick up where you were where you were at then while your guys were trying to find that real quick.
Cool.
Because I was further up the trail with Jeff, and for some reason Jeff got super nervous. I don't know if he was sensing that there was something up on the hill or what, but he started getting real nervous. And then all of a sudden he was getting frustrated that you guys weren't like coming up the hill to join us, because it was just Jeff and I, and we were, maybe like 300-400 yards up the trail ahead of you guys, and we were up there by ourselves, and he was like kind of panicking. And then all of a sudden, like, we started hearing you guys like half yelling back down the trail for us to get back to where you were. So then we came slowly walking back down the trail to you guys, and then you told us you had captured something. What was real weird about that incident is that Jeff and I were like, I don't know, not 500 yards, probably a gross exaggeration, maybe like 100 yards up the trail ahead of you guys, but we never heard what you guys heard, despite the fact that we weren't that far from you, and that it still, because of where we were on the trail, it still would have been directly across the hill from us. Like, we should have been able to hear it, but we didn't hear what you guys were hearing. So I thought that was strange. But Jeff and I were also possibly talking at that point when that happened. So, if you just check your attachments instead of scrolling all the way through the thread.
Check your attachments. Just click it.
Yeah, hit the letters at the top, and then hit info, and then scroll down.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Why did I delete the group? Because it stopped working. Yeah, it stopped working for me.
I think that's a conspiracy. It's a government conspiracy. They don't want us talking about Bigfoot. So
that's probably
you already know that's exactly what's going on.
But yeah, anyway, I thought it was strange that Jeff and I should have heard what you guys heard, especially because you said it was extremely loud. We heard nothing.
Then I wonder if that kind of is maybe a little frustrating, probably for me and Adam and Brandon, because, on the onset, I think all of us were like, that was kind of cool. But then I remember I colorfully said, I think it's a dog.
Right.
But, and I'll play that here in a second for everybody to hear it. But it leaves an impression more so when you're there. And everybody's heard other people say that 1,000 times, but it is true. But it seems super duper loud to the three of us. But again, there were houses around. So, have we really explained the exact spot that we were at?
Yeah, I mean, we
not
were
exact, but
right. Yeah, we're in Adams County, Ohio, which is a very southern region of Ohio. It's right on the border with Kentucky. It's a location that is probably best known for being featured in an episode of Terror in the Woods, which is a TV show that runs on Destination America, and it runs on Travel Channel too now, but they changed the name of the show when it's on Travel Channel. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a location that's like known for weird activity. That entire region of Ohio is known for really weird activity. I talked to a friend that actually lives down that way, and he compared it to like the Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So it's not just like Bigfoot stuff, but there's all kind of weird, stuff that happens down there. So it was a place that we knew supposedly had Bigfoot activity, and we were with guys who had a lot of encounters in that area. So that's why we were there.
Yes, and of course we were filming for On the Trail of Bigfoot.
On the Trail of Shannon LeGros.
Yes.
Found her.
Elusive. Like a little hermit. All right, so here, let me play this, and I'll play it probably a couple times, and I'll have to bleep out my colorful language, but that's okay. Here we go.
You can see something, but in the back of your mind, you'll be like, what was that? No. It was a dog or something. No. It was a dog. No, it wasn't. Does it sound like a dog? I don't know. It'd be a big fucking dog, like a great
All right, I'll play the howl, and then I'll leave the rest out, but just so people can hear it. Oh boy.
You can see something, but in the back of your mind, you'll be like, what was that? No. It's a dog or something.
Yeah, so there you go.
It sounded like Shannon and I were getting ready to get into an argument. She's like, "It's a dog," and I said, "No." She said, "It sounds like a dog." No. Sounds like a dog. You think that sounded like a dog? No.
It's our first official fight. It was
our
almost
first fight.
there.
Yeah. All relationships have to go through that, though.
Yeah. I mean, I frequently wanted to punch you in the face, but I held back.
It's
something about your face, like in Step Brothers.
That's my reaction to him. Pretty much as soon as he steps out of his car, every time comes
I don't
to
blame you.
Guys here. I just want to punch him.
I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. Come on over here, so I can just punch you right in your grill, please.
He's teaching Tommy to do it too.
Oh, I bet.
But yeah, I don't know what that sound is personally. I think probably coyote or dog. We heard coyote later in the evening.
We heard the craziest coyote sounds, and I wish we had that recorded. We're not saying it was anything paranormal or a group of sand squinches singing and screaming, but that's what it sounded like. It was crazy.
No, it was very clearly coyote, but the crazy thing was how many there had to have been because it picked up and then just went around the valley, and it sounded like Adam was convinced it was sirens at one point. It sounded like sirens. Went for like 45 seconds. But it was definitely coyote.
Well, I think it speaks to the fact too, like we knew what it was, but just hearing that and realizing what sounds animals can actually make, like known animals, like it sounded inhuman. It sounded like something out of a horror movie. But we knew it was coyotes. But at the same time, like if you just hearing that in the woods, you can't help but it's a little disconcerting for sure.
Yeah, it was a gang of them, a gaggle, a murder, whatever the group of yotes would be. Mm-hmm.
Or dogmen. It could have been dogmen.
It could have been dogmen.
You don't know. We didn't see them.
A whole choir of dogmen.
Yeah.
Congregation. That's what they call them. A group of dogmen is a
congregation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Bloods and Crips and congregations.
Mm-hmm. What was interesting about that night, that particular stop was it was whatever. Like we grabbed that audio, which was interesting, but like other than that, I really wasn't that impressed with that particular location. But then we went to that graveyard, and that was one of the creepiest places I've ever been. Like I would put that on the same level as Area X, and Area X, I'd never really been anywhere that creepy before. I would almost put that graveyard location on that same level because it wasn't even because I was scared of like a Bigfoot or anything like that. It was that you could not see your hand in front of your face. And we were hearing what sounded like 100 coyote just, singing and moving, clearly moving in what sounded to me like our direction. And we're up on this hill, like a couple hundred yards down this little gravel road. Actually, I don't even think you could call that a hill. It had to have been like a mountain, right? We were pretty high up.
Cannot see your hand in front of your face.
But you couldn't see.
So dark.
You could not see anything. I would say that was as dark as Area X.
Yeah.
And what's weird about that, as opposed to X is we were in Area X in the Ouachita Mountains in the middle of June, when the tree and when the leaf canopy is so thick. We were in that location on that hill by the graveyard in the middle of December when there's no no leaf canopy whatsoever. So, and it's still that dark. Imagine being up there when in the middle of summer.
I just feel bad for whoever was felt like going solo camping that night. And then and it's not even an exaggeration, at least to our ears, it wasn't, that it did sound like 100 coyotes just popping off. And it sounded so strange. And I totally agree with Adam, because at first I thought, oh God, someone's really hurt. Like they're sending out the cavalry with the sirens here. And then it went on for so long. I was like, that's so cool, because I've never heard coyotes do that. But it sounded like so many of them. I just imagine some solo camper going, okay, never doing that again.
Just packing up and just getting back at the truck and heading out. Yeah.
That's got to happen a lot with hunters and stuff. Like people go out, or campers, hunters go out, and then they get like call blasted by some Bigfooters in the middle. That's got to be a fairly frequent event.
You're like, these asshats again.
Yeah.
Getting the coyotes stirred up. That's awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. We should probably bring up the fact that the Ohio Night Stalkers were kind enough they got us set up in this cool cabin, and we're all hanging out, and I happened to come across a Ouija board, because I think that, every good story, whether it's just Bigfoot, needs a good paranormal side. Ouija board?
And then And then that night, so then you tried to like throw it at me or something. And then that night I was sound asleep in bed, and all of a sudden what fell off? Like something on the nightstand next to me just rolls off the nightstand in the middle of the night, and I knew automatically the demons had come out of the Ouija board that you tried to throw at me.
I was only trying to get somebody to play it with me, but everybody turned me down because you're a bunch of sissies. And then, you did have a little strange something on the nightstand deal that night.
I didn't even want to look at it. I didn't even want to look at the Ouija board.
I think part of the reason I didn't want to, I didn't want to mess with it because it was like 3 a.m. I barely slept in 2 nights. Shannon literally hadn't slept in 2 nights.
Yeah. Like 49 hours.
We were all dead tired. We'd been out in the rain. Brandon had flown into Cleveland the night before and slept like 2 hours. None of us had slept, and we'd all been traveling. I had to drive up to the airport and get you at like 5 a.m. that morning. Yeah. And then go back, and then we had to drive the 4 hours down to Adams County from Wadsworth. The police are coming to get us.
Busted. I don't know if you can't talk about Ouija boards and Bigfoot, see?
No, the cover-up is in full effect. Oh, these guys, they're going to roll right, probably. My office is in, like, well, you know this, but my office is in downtown, so you get to pick up all the amazing...
Everybody didn't know that. You have great offices across the street from that awesome restaurant. I'd just be eating there like 3 times a day. Like, I gotta go to the office. What a bummer.
Before I leave.
Yeah.
It's too late. I was going to take you there today, but we didn't get to go.
Well, no, like before I leave, like we'll be right. We could go like another time.
I don't know. They're only open tomorrow. This is a great conversation.
Hey, this is how it is.
Yeah,
it's fine.
That place is cool. But the big thing for me now is making sure that we can do this again and hopefully do it again and again and again. Because I think you having this particular group, like the 4 of us as like the On the Trail of team, I think that would be ideal. Is someone seriously being like arrested or something outside the window?
Is that in your building?
No, it's like it's right outside.
They just drove by.
It just drove away.
Handling the loiterers down there, huh? Jeez.
Yeah, well, there's nothing else to do in this town.
Yeah, it's not exactly high crime rate around there, I would imagine, huh?
Well, actually, there was a huge FBI drug raid a few weeks ago. Like, this is insane. I think the entire town is burning down or something. What was that? Was that
another one?
Oh, yeah, there's at least...
Is it fire trucks?
No, it's police cars.
Oh. That's not good.
I don't know. That's strange.
Maybe a Unabomber situation?
Anyway, yeah, there was like a huge FBI drug and firearm raid, and they caught this like huge drug lord that was apparently living here in Wadsworth, but was responsible for arms dealings like across the country.
He's like Nicky Cage in what's it? War? I love that movie. I can't remember the name of it. Anyhow.
Nicky Cage and Lord of War.
Lord of War. Yes.
God of War? God of War?
That's different.
I think it's
God of War is a video game.
It's a video game.
It's Lord of War.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I'm glad we get to the bottom of this.
We have the important conversations. That's for sure.
But that was my favorite. That was my favorite weekend of filming as far as like most fun I had. That was the most fun I had while filming On the Trail of. Like the most memorable stuff that happened to me was probably in X, but
yes,
as far as like enjoyable time actually shooting, it was when you guys were here.
Okay, so since you brought it up, I mean, are you talking about the fact that you've been swayed a little bit closer to believing that these things might actually be out there, or is that something we're saving for?
No, yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay, so let's set everybody up with Area X and what it's like to get in there and how very serious they are about the work that they're doing out there.
Seth's nodding at me, so I'm going to take this one.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, so Area X, like if you have been interested in like the subject of Bigfoot for any time and kind of gone a little bit more than surface level, you'll probably have heard of they were the Texas Bigfoot Research Conservancy and then kind of morphed into the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. So essentially it's a group of very science-minded men and women that have found a spot in the Ouachita Mountains of Oklahoma where they feel like is I remember Brian Brown from the Bigfoot show using the word refugium. So kind of like where I always imagine like animals backed into a corner as civilization kind of encroaches on them, and they feel like they found that in the Ouachita Mountains of Oklahoma with apes. So they call them wood apes because it sounds a bit more scientific than Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever. But anyway, so we had the opportunity to go into Area X and spend some time with kind of the core members of the NAWAC. And just speaking a bit about getting in there, it's not an exaggeration to say it's essentially 2 hours of rock crawling back into the woods where they have their research area set up. I mean, these guys, they outfit their trucks just to get into this location, which I think is pretty crazy. I mean, they're super nice vehicles, but then they're lifted with huge tires and the total off-road equipment, just kitted out completely to get back there to the area. I mean, it is needless. I mean, it is just off the beaten path completely and totally.
And so their goal is to collect a Bigfoot specimen through either killing one or finding one dead and bringing in a part of the body or whatever. But they're in there to prove that they exist. And part of the reason they want to do that is they feel like they could potentially be endangered due to the destruction of habitat across the United States. My eyes were open to some things while I was making this episode that I'd never really considered, because I do understand that there's a lot of reforestation that goes on, and I'm definitely not anti-logging, but I don't I'm a capitalist, so like I'm aware of the positive impacts of that, but I also was totally unaware of how they go about the reforestation of areas that they've logged, and that part was really shocking to witness, and you can see why there is a huge negative to simply going into a place, clear cutting it, and then replanting it with these
it's like generic tree.
Yeah, it's like looking at a farm at a Christmas tree farm. Like and what was really stunning was like on the drive out, Brian stopped at a particular spot where you could see the old growth forest, or not old growth, but the original hardwood forest up against one of the replanted areas, mm-hmm. and the way those two things like don't mesh.
The contrast, yeah.
It is a huge contrast between the two of them. And the other thing that we noticed was those areas that have been replanted, there's no animals. Like you don't see deer in there, you don't see squirrel, things like that. I guess like there are smaller animals in those spots, but it's nowhere near as heavily as like when we were in X. And we had, like Adam has been talking about this a lot, but like there was like one night where we were sitting in X and this like rabbit walked into camp, and it had no idea what we were doing. It wasn't scared of us because it had never seen people before. It just like walked right up to us, and it's a place that's probably the most isolated I've been in a particular location, just because there aren't people. We were 9 miles. We were only 9 miles as the crow flies, like off of a main road. But to get back in there, like I said, it's 2.5 hours. It's not an easily traveled to spot. You're not gonna just decide to go into Area X and boom, you're there.
You're not gonna accidentally stumble into it.
That's the other thing.
You know, like you
got to know exactly where you're going. Yeah. There's roads off of roads and things like that to get back in there. The thing that I always think of is like the rabbit hole. When you're going into X, the first hour of the road isn't that bad. You're basically just on a gravel road, a gravel logging road that's pretty well traveled, and we passed some other people like logging trucks and stuff like that on the way in. And then you get to this spot that they call the rabbit hole, and you look at it and it's just like a hole in this dense undergrowth that the road runs down. And Alton's like telling us about how this is the rabbit hole, and you go straight down it, and as soon as you go through that spot, I remember feeling like, okay, we're entering another world.
And it's like going back in time. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is that. Before you go into the rabbit hole too, it's kind of interesting. They have a flat open spot they call the parking lot, because essentially, if you have a vehicle that is ill-equipped to be off-road, that is pretty much the last. That is as far as that vehicle can go before you risk getting stuck and not being able to get back out. So there's the parking lot, and then the rabbit hole, and it really is like Seth said. It is like entering into a different world. It's just so untouched.
It's straight down too.
It's straight down. Yeah.
You go down once you're through the rabbit hole. It's like straight down the side of this mountain, and that's where the road basically becomes a washout. I mean, it's like this is where the water from the top of the hill is draining during storms. So it's more like traveling down a creek than it is a road. You know, like they jokingly call it like the mule trail. I mean, that's kind of like what you're picturing. You're not picturing, like, don't picture a gravel road like heading down into X, because that's not what it is. It is a creek that you're traveling down the side of this mountain to get into there. So our first time in there, like, we'd been driving for like an hour and a half, and my stomach's getting queasy because you're just lurching all over the place. And I'm like, pull over, you know, I gotta pee or something. So I get out of the car, and the first thing I see when I get out of the car is this black widow spider just chilling by the door of the car that I just got out of. And that was like the first thing I saw. And Adam can back me up on this. I was like, there's a black widow spider over here. And Alton goes, I don't think they have those in here. I was like, I'm looking at it. And Adam comes over and looks at it. And sure enough, like the
hourglass.
Yep, the
red
hourglass
and everything.
Yeah.
And of course, Alton Higgins, who was driving us back down in there, I guess he's a retired biology professor.
Yeah.
I guess comes over to it, like, you know, pretty much sticks his hand like 3 inches from it, moves the shrubbery ground. He's like, "Oh, you're right. You're right. That is what that is." And it's like, yeah, no joke. As Seth and I are both climbing back into the bed of the truck to get away.
And we saw another one later that night. One actually tried to like dive bomb into our tent that night.
Yeah.
And so that's our induction into Area X was like the two of us traveling into a place that was the most rugged, isolated place I've ever been. I don't know about Adam, but I've never been in a location like that before. And like pretty much as soon as you're in there, you're sitting down with like members of the NAWAC, and they're going to walk you through what you do if they kill one. And that's like, because that's a big deal. Like they want to make sure you're aware of like what happens if while you're in there they happen to shoot and kill a Bigfoot.
Are we allowed to mention something that really stuck in my head ever since you told me about this in the truck? But it makes a lot of sense, and it's a plan that you need to have. And if I can't leave this in, it's totally fine. I'll just cut it out. But you mentioned that they have this contingency plan. As far as, you know, obviously the thought is that if you take one down, there's going to be others around, and you might need to act very quickly, and you may not be able to take out the entire body. So they have this plan. Well, do you take a hand? Do you take a foot? Do you take the head? You know, I don't even know if we can talk about that, but I found that really, really fascinating, and a really good part of a very serious plan to prove this is science.
Yeah, I think I don't think they would have a problem with us mentioning that. It was more, you know, and in that situation, they were talking about like, what do you do in that situation if you shoot one and the others are either agitated by it or you just cannot get it out of the location? Like what they were asking us, like, what part do you want to cut, you know, to make sure.
And what did you guys say? I mean, was that kind of a quiz?
I said, take the head. Yeah. Like that was my thing. Take the head or the hands.
Yeah, that's kind of what we thought. I think it really speaks to like the way that they've thought things through. Like, you know, the conversation was kind of surreal. You just sit there and talk to them, you know, because they would say, all right, if this happens, there's a potential that this could become a very dangerous kind of hostile situation immediately. Seth, you're going to go here. Adam, you're going to go here. This is where we will be. This is what we are going to be doing. Now we're going to get back to this particular point here and here. And I mean, it's thought out. Like they are completely and totally expecting this to be something that they have to do at some point sooner or later.
Daryl later in the episode says, and it might not even be in that episode. It might be in the final episode, but he says that it can happen at any time. He starts talking about how it could happen. You know, he always tells people it could happen today, and he is anticipating that when he goes in there and goes out in the woods, he is going to get one. Like there's no doubt in his mind that it's happening. It's just when it happens, but I think he is fully intent on this happening every single time he goes into X. Like, this is going to be the time. And I think that probably is why Daryl gets frustrated. Like Daryl was talking about how frustrating it can be. I mean, like, to him, like, I'm sorry, Shannon, I feel like we're not letting you talk at all.
No, that's okay. No, you're a host stream, really. I can just kick back.
Well, like, the craziest thing that happened, aside from like what personally happened to us with like the eye shine and the noises we heard, was within 3 hours of getting into X, Daryl gets all camoed up, and he's going to go out in the woods with his gun and sit in a blind and hunt a Bigfoot like you would a turkey or a deer or whatever. So we walk with him back into the woods. We get him all set up with his blind or whatever, and we leave. And we were going off to just kind of get a lay of the land. Like, Brian was going to take us on a nice walk around Area X. And we actually got lost, which isn't in the episode of episode 5. It didn't make it in because it was kind of confusing. But we actually got lost like almost immediately. We left Daryl in his location at the blind, and within like 15 minutes, Brian had no idea where we were. And wasn't he like unable to get GPS or something was happening? He was lost. Like, we were completely. I'm like, oh great. So like within an hour of being here, we're gonna immediately just
we were
die.
off the grid there for just a minute completely.
And then I forget what happened. Eventually, they started radioing in, and he was able to figure out where we were and get us back to a place he knew. But then we start getting radio calls from Daryl that he's seeing movement in the trees ahead of him. And as he's radioing in, we were hearing noise. And I say noise because I don't know. We didn't know what we were occasionally hearing sounds like brush moving and stuff like that. There's a really interesting piece of footage in episode 5 where I'm talking about how we were hearing noise in the direction of Daryl, like where Daryl was, and the camera is being held by me. I start walking toward noise. It's hard to tell this, and you wouldn't know this unless I'm telling you this right now. But when I'm talking in episode 5 about how we were hearing noise in the direction of Daryl Collier, all of a sudden it cuts to a shot. I'm holding the camera, and I start walking forward past Adam. And I was walking in that direction because I was hearing noise, and I was convinced I was going to like see something down the trail because I was hearing stuff that sounded like it was right down the trail. And there's a shot, a really brief moment where you see a bunch of the foliage like move, and there was no wind. Like, you can see nothing else on the trail ahead of me is moving. It's just this, all of a sudden, this one whole section of tree or bush or whatever starts shaking, and then it's done. Like, there's nothing else around that's moving. I think that's a really weird thing because I don't remember seeing that bush or tree shake. But anyway, that's a little Easter egg for listeners to, like, when you watch episode 5 on the Trail of Bigfoot, look for the shaking bush with no wind.
Well, yeah, and you had to point it out to me when you let me watch that episode. And by the way, the foliage there is completely not what I expected it to be. It looks more like something like Washington State or something. Extreme amounts of ground foliage.
Yeah, it's like Salt Fork levels of like undergrowth. Yeah. And the problem is, unlike Salt Fork, this is mountainous. So like Salt Fork, you're going to have some hills, but that's about it. This, you've got rugged terrain that is rocky. Remember we had the discussions about the rocks in there. The rocks are there's so many of them, and then there's sections of the area that are so rocky, and they've been worn down so much by the rain over the years that it looks like a brick street.
Yeah, it looks like tile almost.
It looks like someone tiled a street or something, but it's just the way the rock is from all the water they get in there wearing the rock down. But it's really difficult to travel over. Anyway, we're hearing Alton, or we're hearing Daryl, radio us that he's seeing something through his scope, and then it became like very apparent that stuff was getting serious. Like, he was becoming more and more agitated, and then it got to the point where he was telling us that he was looking at an ape, through his scope, and his voice was shaking. He was really kind of freaking out. We headed back to camp because we were out in the middle of the woods. We headed back to camp, and while we were at camp, it just kept sort of escalating. And then pretty much after a couple of minutes of him sitting in this blind trying to figure out what he could do to get this thing, the thing just turned around and walked off.
Yeah, I think it just moved off into kind of the foliage and the brush.
And the thing is, like, the question we keep getting asked is, like, why didn't he shoot it? Or why didn't he give chase? We went to the location of his sighting where everything was happening. It was the undergrowth in there is really heavy, although in that location actually wasn't as heavy as some of the other spots. But for him to shoot this thing, it was about 70 meters up a hill. And he didn't think he had a clear shot to where. And
I climbed the hill too. Like I went up there just to see, because Daryl had mentioned, and that's one thing that stood out to me. Daryl had mentioned that he heard, as it moved off, he heard rocks and kind of what sounded like maybe it was standing in like a dry creek bed or something like that. And so I climbed up the side of this hill, and sure enough, right about where he had where he thought he was looking at this creature, it was washed out, flat rocks, gravel, everything up there. And I couldn't, I'm 6 feet tall and was standing straight up, and I knew exactly where Brian and Daryl and Seth were standing, and I couldn't see them from where I was. And I don't think that you guys could see me either. So whatever it was up there. We found the general location, but I mean, you know, if you're familiar at all with hunting as well, like a good ethical hunter is not going to take a shot unless he's completely and totally convinced that he's going to be able to take the animal down right there. And so that was kind of what Daryl had talked to us about. He could have just, taken a shot and crossed his fingers and hoped that it wasn't going to ricochet off of a branch or hit the creature somewhere that's just going to injure it. And, who knows what that does.
And just being fully transparent, I was saying to Adam angrily under my breath so that the rest of them didn't hear it. I was like, shoot it. Just shoot it. Like, who cares? Can you imagine if we had gotten in there and within 3 hours something got shot?
Yeah, right.
But when you're in that situation, it's more frustrating than anything. And I'm sure for Daryl, it was even more frustrating. But for me, like, wanting something to happen, having expected nothing to happen, I went into X fully expecting nothing to happen while we were in there, and I would make a little, episode of On the Trail of that kind of focused on, their research in the area and what they do and how they are as people, for there to be as much activity as there was in 2.5 days. The 2.5 days that we were in there is kind of crazy, like that we experienced the things that we did, especially for Daryl to be scoping one in, within 3 hours of arriving in that location. And that was just the beginning. That was like the start of our trip.
Now, do you guys know, as far as just take the camp and then go out in a big circle, is there any hunting land around there? Would there be any reason for these Bigfoot to be like, oh, look, a gun? Or is there any reason for any of the area Xers to not only be, like you said, Adam, a responsible hunter, but to minimize the amount of shots that they would take unless they were certain, because they wouldn't want to spoil the area as far as it being what seems to be a very active area for Bigfoot?
The area, to my knowledge, is probably hunted. Like, I would assume that there's hunters in there because of the fact that it is, though, private land. Where they are is they own a good chunk of where we were, but then beyond that, it is. I probably can't say who owns the land, but it's a private area, and we're talking thousands of acres of private area.
Okay.
But I would assume that there are still hunters in there. Having said that, we were in there 2.5 days, and the only gunshots I ever heard were Daryl shooting at a raccoon that made the mistake of wandering into camp, and that might have been it.
I think that was it.
That was the only gunshot.
I mean, there's the likelihood of there having been hunting done in that area is probably pretty high. But I think, like you just mentioned, Shannon, I think that's an observation that I kind of made as well, that if you are in there to take one of these animals down, the last thing you want to do is to be the one to introduce them to a gun without actually taking the animal down. But, because if they are as smart as what they seem to be, if the creature actually exists, then it's not going to take too many, dings on a shoulder or on a leg for it to realize, like, hey, these guys, when I see them, I don't need to be anywhere around them. And I think, I'm sure that probably enters their minds as well.
I mean, because these guys actually have some basically semi-permanent structures that they have built so that they can go in and at least be a little bit comfortable and not be just sleeping on a mat under the stars while there's all of these apes running around, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even the property before the property they're on now isn't the original Area X, and I say that if you listen to Brian's Bigfoot show, you would know that just from listening to that show as well. So that's public knowledge. But they were on the property they were on before had a series, multiple cabins, right? There was like one or two cabins on the previous property, and on the current one, they've just built a nice like cabin. But even that cabin is mostly used, I mean, I think people are going to sleep in it, but they've built it to have they have
an Overwatch on top. I mean, it's a research cabin. It's not a luxury cabin. It is there. It's something that you would imagine seeing, some researcher in the Amazon or something wanting to kind of embed in with animals. It's very kind of no nonsense. There's certainly like no creature comforts to it. It's there to research and that's it for sure.
I want to know if they're going to mount a 50 cal maybe on the roof there in the crow's nest, just say forget it. We don't need
it's probably depending on who's in there. It's probably not going to be far off from that because that is one thing I could say is like those dudes are armed. Like the night that we had the thing scream at the night that we heard the rock throw and heard the yell and the laughter, Daryl came bolting out the door in his boxers holding like some sort of huge assault rifle. I mean, like that's the kind of stuff like they're very legitimate and totally expect to have to protect themselves or take one of these things.
That was the moment that I think my brain, I said, what in the world are we doing? You have this thing, without going into a ton of detail yet, and we'll probably touch on it, but this just very monkey sounding scream and laughter and rock throw, and then you look out and there's a former Army intelligence guy coming out of a cabin in his boxers with an automatic weapon, looking around, look at it, and it's just like, what is happening? Like, I'm 30. I'm 32 years old. What am I doing? What am I doing here?
I'm too young to die. So you guys have both kind of touched on it a little bit. So without further ado, and any more teasing, people are going to be like, "What are you talking about? Rock throws and laughter, and what is all this stuff going on?" So let's talk about that as much as we can.
Well, yeah, and just to set the stage a little bit, like before this happened, the night before, on the first night, and that timeline won't be clear in the final episode, and that's fine. Like I wasn't that concerned about the timeline being obvious, but the eye shine was one night, the scream was the next night, but the first night in there, we were sitting in camp. And they don't light a fire at night. They just sit in pitch black. And we're all sitting there and they're talking. And I started noticing lights, these two pinpoints of lights on the side of the hill beside us. And the reason I noticed is because it is pitch black. Like you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's as dark in there as you can get. And when all of a sudden there's two lights on a hill, it becomes immediately apparent. And I sat there staring at these stupid lights for like, I say lights, but I don't mean lights. I mean like you were looking at something that was illuminated, or where it really shouldn't be. So I'm looking at these two pinpoints of light on the side of this hill, and I'm watching it for probably 2 or 3 minutes before I even said anything. And the reason I was watching it is like I was trying to see how high the hill was. I was trying to figure out if I was seeing starshine through the leaf canopy overhead, like if the hill was that tall. I couldn't tell. So eventually I asked Brian, like, how tall is this hill? And then Brian tells me, and I'm like, okay, that's not what I'm seeing. I was looking, like halfway up the hill then. So I start filming with my camera. I tell the others of it. I told Daryl, I was like, I'm looking at eyeshine, and they all got up. We all come over there. And I'm looking at this with Daryl. We're looking at these two eyes, and Brian stands up and for some reason walks over with a flashlight and just turns the light onto the hill. And as soon as he did, these eyes went sideways across the hill while staring at us. So they never, I say eyes because that's what they were. It was either an owl, or some other type of animal with eyeshine, but they were looking at us. They appeared to be fairly large, and they moved across the hill, straight across the hill, like something was running. We never heard any noise, but they moved sideways across this hill while still staring at us. And then they eventually went away. But that was the night before. I was the one that was trying to tell everyone else it was an owl, or it was like a mountain lion or something else. Like I just kept, I insisted that they listen to me, that this was not an ape, but they were, Brian was pretty convinced that what I saw was an ape. So the next night, we were laying in bed. It was about 2:30 in the morning. I had just started to doze off, and all of a sudden there was just this loud crash sound. It was like hearing a gunshot go off in a place that was very quiet. One thing I should mention about X that's kind of unnerving and weird, it's not very loud ever. There's not a preponderance of like insect noise or anything like that ever. So it's pretty quiet at all times. So when something like this happens, it's unbelievably terrifying. The crash part of this, like the crash happens and it's just immediately apparent that we've heard something thrown onto the roof of the tin, what they call the hooch, which is this big tin metal outbuilding. And then I sat straight up in bed. Adam sat straight up in his bed, and I looked over at him, and all of a sudden, I might have said stuff's about to start then, but I can't remember how that went. But almost immediately after, there was about a 5-second pause between the rock throw, and then there was this very loud whoop. And it sounded like an Apache Indian in a John Wayne movie had just whooped at us. And then, there's another couple seconds pass, or a second passes. It's not much time at all. And there is this gibbon-like laughter that echoes out from the hill, where the whoop just came from. And that was it. Like all of a sudden I went from being the most ardent skeptic for the last year and a half to, okay, they might be here in that span of time.
It's hard to describe too. Like in having been a skeptic for so long, I think you hear people try to convey their stories and like, oh, that's good. That's nice. I don't necessarily buy into that or I've got questions or whatever else. But like hearing even Seth just talk about it there, like the hair on my arm starts to stand up, because it's something that, he described it, how quiet things had been. And it really was, it was obviously very, very late or very early, however you want to look at it. We were exhausted. We're in a tent. For all intents and purposes, it's silent outside. And then it really did sound, just imagine like a gunshot in a dark room when you're not expecting it and you can't see who shot it, and just this rock, this smack, this kind of loud clashing noise and then echo. And then like Seth said, I think we both kind of sat up and it took us a second to realize, whoa, that was super loud. Like that was really uncomfortably loud. And right about that time where you get that, when you realize what's happening, I think it's perfect what Seth said. It sounded like it was a whoop. It was kind of started lower and then rose up louder and louder and louder until it got to a point at the end of it, I think, that was just unnaturally high pitched. And then a brief pause, and then I've told people, imagine walking into like a monkey or a gibbon exhibit at a zoo, and when you hear kind of the gibbons almost laughing, it's what it sounded like. And to me,
yeah, we say gibbon too now because we didn't at the time.
Right.
We at the time we didn't know what that sounded like. So Adam had looked up gibbon laughter on the drive back to Nashville the next day on YouTube, and that was the closest sound that we could come to what we had. Good Lord, it's like a Top Thrill dragster outside.
Pretty much, yeah, an HRA outside.
But yeah, it sounded like a gibbon is what the sound, and that whoop to me is the most interesting part of everything because it's really hard to talk about this event because of the fact that it is hard to convey to people what we experienced, and that is the most frustrating thing for me, because it's like you tell someone about what happened and they immediately have 50 skeptical things they want to tell you heard. You know, like you heard an owl, you heard this. Like we had heard owls the entire time we were there. We know what owls sound like. It wasn't a mountain lion.
Daryl Collier has an uncanny ability to talk to owls and get them to talk back. I mean, we had been listening to
very weird.
2 owls the night prior. And I've in my head what I see is, and this is the picture, like looking back on it, that I've kind of painted, is you've got behind their research cabin, it begins to go uphill. I mean, almost immediately behind the cabin. And I just imagine something back there, some playful chimp, monkey, whatever, spending 20 or 30 minutes kind of tossing rocks at this metal tin roof that it knows is going to make a noise. And then all of a sudden it hits it. It gets very excited. It kind of calls out in excitement, like, hey, I did it, kind of laughs, and then realizes, oh my gosh, that was really loud, and gone.
Yeah, nothing else. That's worth mentioning. Nothing else happened after that. And Adam and I didn't immediately flee the tent or anything. We sat in there. You radioed Brian before we even left the tent. But we never heard another noise. Nothing. I thought things were about to kick off. I thought we were about to experience like another rain of rocks or something. And instead, like there was nothing else that happened after that, which, like you would expect an owl, we're going to hear more owl calls then.
Because that's what they had been doing.
Yeah, they'd been calling while we were in there. But the difference, the big thing about that whoop, the reason the whoop was so interesting to me is like it was clearly human-sized lungs or bigger. Like you were hearing something very powerful, resonant, and loud that let out that whoop, and it was so close.
That's the exact way that I tried to describe, and everyone's so sick of me talking about that damn whoop in Salt Fork, but that is exactly what I heard. And when I heard you guys' version of this in person, I'm like, thank God, thank God somebody close to me that I'm friends with knows exactly what I heard. I'm like, it had a set of lips, and it seemed to have, like you said, at least human-sized lungs, if not larger. It just sounded massive. Yeah. And it leaves such an impression on you, and I don't care if all of us had recorders going, it's still not going to sound the same. Now, what about what hit? Did you guys actually did you find the rock or whatever it was that hit the structure that made that initial crash sound, or was it hard to tell because there's rocks all over the place?
Well, there's rocks all over the place, but also like to get up on the roof would have been next to impossible. And we were leaving. We left the next morning. We in fact, we woke up and immediately took our tent down and left because Brian had to get us out.
We had a 2.5 hour crawl back out.
We had a 2.5 hour crawl back out, and then we had a 7-hour drive back to Nashville. So like to where Adam's car was, and to where I was doing some sort of radio interview that night. I was like frantically trying to get to a hotel. But anyway, so it was just not in the cards to spend any time there that morning. They did pull a rock off the roof of the hooch later, but I think they actually had someone in the group had thrown that up there to see if it would make the same sound. Because they wanted to make sure like what we had heard was that. What the one thing too, like we've told so many people about this encounter, and they all have the same. Did you have you heard an owl? Have you heard what a fox scream sounds like? Right. Have you heard what this sounds like? And the other thing is like, well, nuts when a nut falls from a tree, this thing when it crashed into the roof of the hooch echoed across it echoed like a gunshot. It wasn't a nut falling out of a tree. I also should mention that there are no nuts in the trees that are over the hooch. They actually checked them at the beginning of the year to make sure they weren't misidentifying rock throws, and instead, it ended up being a nut. So they already knew that wasn't even a possibility. So what we heard was nothing, to my mind, that is easily identified. You know, you've either got some crazy hillbilly that's been living in the woods there for
Far
years.
More terrifying.
And somehow managed to stay alive with all these guys with guns that are, you know, mere feet away from him or her, hillbilly. Or you've got some sort of primate, you know, that's tossing rocks at the roof of this hooch and then screaming at us.
Okay, now be honest.
What we heard.
Did the stories of what happened to the miners at Ape Canyon start to flash through your mind, and you're thinking this is about to get real right now? It's
no.
Siege.
You know, like it
was so shocking. I think, at least for me, like there wasn't much. I think it took me a minute to comprehend what was happening.
It did, but I had a weird reaction to it. I got, and I still get kind of emotional about it and it got us talking about the whole phenomenon in a completely different way on the way back from Oklahoma than we had on the way there. On the way there, we were very skeptical. We were making jokes about how nothing was going to happen. We were making jokes about how more than likely the NAWAC was being hoaxed. You know, this was all, and we didn't necessarily believe that, but that was the joke that we were telling. And on the way back, we spent hours talking about behavior and what their family groups might be like and things that you had never considered. And the reason was, like, what we heard was not, you know, Adam's saying it was shocking or whatever. It definitely was, but it was shocking in that it was unexpected and it wasn't shocking like all of a sudden I'm terrified that I'm about to be murdered by a Bigfoot. It was shocking because all of a sudden there's your view of the natural world is changing, and what we heard sounded playful. It's like Adam said, it sounded playful. It sounded like it was having a great time at our expense, and it did not leave me. I've always expected that experience to be, if I ever had it, I expected it to be like an episode of Ghost Adventures or some sort of television show,
almost unnatural,
something terrifying, you know, like something like that, like you're encountering a ghost, and instead, like what it was like being in a zoo and experiencing an animal doing what it should be doing in its natural environment.
And we just happened to be there when it was
doing it to witness it. Yeah. And so that was and even that night I remember I was laying in my bunk thinking about, like, how many babies are in these woods? Like, like weird, you know, like questions about, like, well, how, you know, where's the mom at? Is she mad that he just did that? Like, just a weird
now. Yeah. I mean, do you feel like you needed that to happen to you guys? Because I know that you take the more skeptical approach to things, which is great, and that's fine. But do you feel like, not that you would have stopped making films for some reason, you know, after this, if nothing happened, I'm just saying, do you feel like you needed that to fire you up and be like, oh my God, these things might really be out there?
I absolutely would not be where I am today on the subject. My interest in it was waning when I started making On the Trail of Bigfoot. On the Trail of Bigfoot was going to be my finale. Like, this is it. I've said all I want to say on the subject. I already did a podcast about it for 100+ episodes. I've done movies about it, and now I'm making a 6-episode miniseries that walks you through the whole history of the subject. Like, I don't know how much more I have to say about Bigfoot. So for me to have that happen, the only way it could have been better is if I would have seen what was throwing, you know, the rock. But we're actually in a fairly frustrating place, at least for me, because we know something happened to us, and the only explanation seems to be that some sort of primate in the woods was throwing rocks and screaming, but we don't for sure know. And that's why when people ask me where I'm at, I'm like, well, I'm at maybe like 80%, because I've had something happen that I can't explain, but what that is, I'm still not sure of.
But that's huge for you, right? I mean, that's night and day from going into X and coming out of X.
In 2.5 days, I went from the far reaches of the most skeptical I've ever been. At the beginning of 2018, I was the most skeptical I've ever been about Bigfoot. To go from that to where I'm at now, which is probably the most, hopeful or optimistic about it that I've been since maybe when I first got into this and I was just a naive kid who was 100% convinced they exist because people told me they did. Like, to go from there to here in the span of like 1 year, and really that change happened in literally a night, like in the span of 30 seconds from hearing something, crash into a roof and something howl. So yeah, I think for it to happen, I needed something like this to happen. The only way it could have been better is if I actually would have seen the monkey smack Adam upside the head.
He would have accomplished what we all wanted to.
Right, not even with a rock, just smack him upside the head.
Open palm smack. Yeah.
Maybe even a good backhand. That would be good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think too, like speaking to like Seth's point, they're not about getting smacked by a monkey, but like beyond that, like I would always kind of reference, Occam's razor. Like the simplest explanation is most likely the correct one. At least that's where you should start. And so I'd always looked back and thought, okay, whatever it might have been, a wood knock or whatever. I think those are interesting, but simplest explanation is a branch breaks and falls and sounds like it knocks. And I used something in an article that I wrote one time about, a ball rolls off of a table and you can either jump to that, well, that was a ghost that pushed it, or you can say maybe the table's a little uneven. Occam's razor is going to say probably the table's uneven. What I didn't expect though is when Occam's razor leads you to there's a giant monkey in the woods, because that would have been the simplest explanation from what we heard. I mean, I heard a monkey. I heard a rock hit a roof of something. I heard what sounded like a monkey laugh in a whoop and whatever else. And the simplest explanation is an ape, which is crazy. And so then there's this really, it's really hard to wrap your brain around that fact that like the thing you used to disprove everything all of a sudden is now convincing you the other direction, which is a really big turn for me anyway.
So are you guys going to have subsequent trips out to Area X?
We talked almost immediately on the way back, on the drive back, about like how we want to go back. Now, I am not to the point where like I'm probably at where Bob Strain is at on X, where he says, I think this place wants to kill me. Like, I'm not to where Brian is, where Brian talks about it very romantically. And like, he has this romanticized version, I think, of X in his head or something. I'm not to that point at all. Like, that place sucks.
It's really hot. Seth had extreme migraines.
The worst migraines I've ever had for 2.5 days that I could not get rid of no matter what I did. I was absolutely miserable for 2.5 days. But we had stuff happen that I wish we could have been there the whole week. I really do. Like after we left, especially, like there was other activity that happened after we left, although we were there for, it seems like, the best stuff. Which was actually, like one of the things I talked to Brian on the phone not long after we had got, or maybe it was through text, but yeah, he was texting me while they were still in there after we had come home. And what he actually had said at one point is like, they might have been there so much. There might have been so much activity in the time we were there because they didn't know who we were. Like they'd never heard Adam and I before. Mm-hmm. Because Kathy Strain's in there, Bob Strain's in there, Daryl and Brian are in there. Those four are in there a lot. And so maybe they're familiar with the sound of their voice. But Adam and I aren't in there a lot. So maybe it's like one of those things where they're drawn in out of curiosity.
Well, and we pitched a tent away from the cabin as well. Like there was new stuff on the ground. There were, I think the vibe, I think, is probably totally different to people that have never been in there compared to people who just come in and it's, it's a second home to them, more or less.
You're pissing the apes off.
Right?
Yeah.
Pissing more things off, Adam.
Making them super curious. But it was like, it was terrifying. I not only had this migraine, but you couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep at night because you're laying there and like it's boiling hot and you're terrified to open the tent window because like you're afraid these eyes are going to suddenly start peering in at you at any minute. You're also scared of the fact that there was a mountain lion on the hill behind the camp.
Fun.
And that there's black bear in there. And so like there's snakes, there's like everything that could possibly kill you.
The black widows.
want to kill you.
Well, the rattlesnakes have evolved with no rattles.
Yeah,
in
they've adapted to not.
So they shake their tails and there's no rattle in them.
Yeah,
It's a bunch of
there's no
BS,
rattle.
isn't it?
It's just
I mean,
weird.
there's no reason for that. They
There's no
should
reason.
keep
It's
the
totally
rattles.
uncalled for.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You don't need silent rattlesnakes. Come on. Stupid. Okay, so as far as On the Trail of Bigfoot specifically, I mean, is there anything else that we need to touch on and talk about? And let's talk about the setup for everybody when they're going to see this, as far as it's a 6-parter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 6-episode miniseries about the first 3 episodes are a storyline called The Legend, which is the entire history of the subject from the 1800s all the way up to present day. And then episodes 4 through 6 are called The Search, and that is much more focused on popular theories about what Bigfoot might be and the actual ongoing search to find Bigfoot. And that's where Area X is episode 5. Episode 4 is about the some of the investigators on the Chestnut Ridge. So like there's a lot of footage in the whole series, of like people actually looking for Bigfoot. There was over 21 people interviewed for the series. It's split into 6 episodes. The first 3 episodes will be condensed into one film on Amazon. So if you're going to watch this on Amazon, it's episodes 1 through 3 are condensed into a film called On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Legend, and episodes 4 through 6 are condensed into a second film called On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Search. And those will both be available on the same day on March 29th on Amazon, or you can see them the way they're intended to be seen, which is as a 6-episode miniseries, episodic. So you get the beginning and end, and you can choose to continue watching or not watch after each episode, and that will be available as the actual 6-episode miniseries on Vimeo On Demand, VidiSpace, and on DVD through shop.smalltownmonsters.com. For listeners in the did you like how I did that cough as loud as humanly possible?
It's just like my intros,
Yeah. The if you're in Northeast Ohio, we're actually going to show it on the big screen at the Canton Palace Theater on Friday, March 29th. And this is not a series that is going to make its way onto big screens very often. I don't really plan on doing a lot of public screenings of it, just because it's an episodic miniseries and it's not really meant to be, split apart or shown in chunks. So you can come though and watch it with us at the Canton Palace Theater on March 29th. We're going to show 4 of the 6 episodes,
which is a very lovely theater, and I'm sure there will be popcorn again, right?
Yeah, they're popcorn.
Always popcorn.
It's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, a couple other films coming out for you guys here in 2019 is Terror in the Skies and the Missouri Monsters. So let's talk a little bit about Terror in the Skies. We shot this back in September. It's a feature length. So this is our first feature length follow up to Bray Road Beast. On the Trail of Bigfoot, something completely different. This is the follow up to Bray Road Beast, and it'll be the second film in the Monsters of the Midwest trilogy. And it focuses on winged cryptids in the state of Illinois, beginning with the Piasa Bird legend, and then sort of taking you all the way through to present day and focusing on the Chicago Mothman sightings that are happening in Chicago. The story is told in a really in a different way from our other films. It's not really told like chapter by chapter or anything. I guess they all kind of follow different storytelling techniques, but this one's split into 3 sections, each section focused on a different geographic region of the state of Illinois. It starts in southern Illinois, and then it moves to central Illinois, and then it moves to northern Illinois. And it starts with the Alton, Illinois stuff with Piasa and the Alton 1948 Thunderbird flap, and then it moves up to Lawndale. We interviewed 2 modern day witnesses of large winged birds. Both of them have slightly different sightings, like what they saw. They didn't necessarily see like a Thunderbird type creature. They both actually felt that what they saw was more of a
like possibly prehistoric. And one of the witnesses actually felt it was a little more like a humanoid, so that's interesting. And then the final chapter of it is all about Chicago Mothman and the recent sightings, or the Chicago Phantom, or however you want to put it. But that will be out the first week in June, and it is a spiritual sequel, I'm calling it, to the Mothman of Point Pleasant. It kind of has the same vibe, the same like mood as the Mothman of Point Pleasant, but it's also probably the most Seth production we'll ever have made. So I don't know. Adam's actually seen like the opening scene of it. And then you guys have both seen the trailer already, even though the trailer doesn't drop until next week. So it's not as much of a horror movie as our other films. It's much more of like a mystery story or an adventure than it is like a scary movie.
Personal opinions on winged cryptids.
I think it's as far as Thunderbirds are concerned, I think that's the most believable next to Bigfoot. Like especially after being in the state and talking to witnesses, one of the witnesses was unbelievably, that was what I was about to say. It made no sense. I was about to say unbelievably believable.
That makes total sense. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he was incredibly believable. He was he's a outdoorsman. He actually works for a company that makes fishing and hunting gear. Spends a ton of time outside, hunts ducks and goes duck hunting and all that kind of stuff. So like he knows birds, and what he saw seemed to have a 20-foot wingspan. And flew right over his head. So like my personal opinion on like Thunderbirds is I totally buy it. And as far as like the more like, pterodon or pterosaur, I desperately want that to be true. Like I absolutely want there to be dinosaurs flying around.
Right there with you.
In the skies overhead, So it just depends on which aspect of the phenomenon we're talking about.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm right with Seth. Like I'm admittedly, like I've always been like a Bigfoot guy and really looked a lot into that. But just kind of talking about Thunderbirds with Seth and learning a bit more over the past, I guess, couple of months. Really, I think that, like Seth said, other than Bigfoot, I think it's the most plausible kind of cryptid out there. There's nothing fantastical about them other than the fact that they're not seen often and they're enormous. But other than that, there's nothing unbelievable inherently
that's the
about
interesting thing about the Thunderbird part of it to me, and why I think it's so believable is like you could have an abnormally large like creature within a known species.
Right.
I'm not necessarily saying that there's an entire species of these massive, or not species, but I'm not saying that there's an entire like subset of creatures there that we've never discovered that are typically like 15 to 20 feet large, wide wingspan or anything like that. I'm saying you can definitely have an abnormally large creature within a known animal group. And that to me sounds like what the Thunderbird might be. Like obviously that isn't the case with the dinosaurs, but
right.
But and the interesting thing about Alton, aside from the fact that there's some really weird similarities to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the thing that stood out about Alton is that it is home to the world's largest man. So Robert Wadlow comes from Alton, Illinois, and he was like over 8 feet tall, like 8 feet 11, something like that. And he was the world's tallest man. And I was like, how fitting is it that this place known for giant things, like it's giant things, is also home to like the world's tallest man.
The water.
Yeah, something in the water.
Mm-hmm. I just imagine like these birds probably don't have a large breeding population, and then you have somebody like Nacho Libre climbing the cliff and just cracking open the egg because he believes it has magic powers, and you're like, we
That's
needed that one.
Scene.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's the best.
It's a great movie.
Sorry, I'm always comparing some asinine scene in the movie to something very serious that we're talking about.
That's what I do. That is me.
Yeah. All right, so how about now a little bit of Momo, the Missouri Monster?
So Adam's actually producing Momo. Adam and Adrian are producers on that, and I'm stepping away from that particular role because I just don't have the time. So Momo is going to, and one of the reasons I'm stepping away from the producer duties is because the storytelling side of this one's going to be a lot more intricate than our other movies. It's going to be like 70% narrative, and much smaller portion of the movie is going to be a documentary. And there's multiple reasons we're going that route. Mostly the biggest one being the fact that like so many of the original witnesses and people involved in that story are no longer around or willing to talk about it. So we were either going to find a unique way to tell the Momo story, or we were not going to make a movie. And anyone that's listened to like me blab on and on about this stuff for any length of time knows that I'm a huge fan of that story, and I've always wanted to do this movie. So it will feature Lyle Blackburn kind of acting in a Peter Graves style monsters and mysteries, or not monsters and mysteries, mysterious monsters from the 1970s, where he's like addressing the camera. I'm finding a ton of inspiration in those old 70s documentaries, and then but the bulk of the movie is going to be a narrative retelling of the Momo events, and it's going to very much be like a traditional sort of horror movie, but one that would have been made or is made or was made in the 1970s. And it will go to some really weird places, some really disembodied voices in the woods and UFOs in the sky and all kinds of bizarre stuff. Do you want to say anything about that one, because you're involved?
Oh, no, I just think that I do think that it's super interesting. Like, I had a very kind of high level overview of Momo, just like I said, being interested in the subject of Bigfoot anyway, and then really digging in to like Seth mentioned, like the high strangeness aspect of it. There's some really weird stuff that kind of goes along with that story. And I think it's also going to be really interesting to see, just as a fan of small town monsters, kind of Seth take a different creative direction, maybe moving away from the documentary style, kind of purely out of necessity, because he's got to enable to tell the story, but then being able to be on the production aspect of it, where we're looking at like, time appropriate clothing and cars and locations and, that kind of stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see how that story is told, and then weave that in with a bit of that. We talked about it on another podcast the other day, like the very, what would we call it? Like the small town monster style of storytelling and everything. I think it's gonna be a really cool mix of things, and I think the story is much different and involves a lot more than probably most people know from watching Discovery Channel or Travel Channel, like little mini-sodes about Momo.
Yeah, and just to speak to like the fact that it's going to be so heavy on the narrative / recreation side of things. Like, for anyone that's followed us from the beginning knows that we started out with Minerva Monster and Beast of Whitehall and Boggy Creek Monster, none of which had recreations at all. The drive is not to get away from doing documentaries. We do want to do, a narrative at some point, a full scale narrative, but like in exploring a story like this, you've got to find a way to do it, or you simply can't tell the story. And for us, the best way to do it is the way we're going to do it, which is to tell it as at least some large chunk of the movie is going to be a narrative film, a narrative retelling of the Momo events. But having said that, the other two projects we have coming out this year, On the Trail of Bigfoot and Terror in the Skies, are like as documentary as Small Town Monsters gets. So especially On the Trail of Bigfoot, where
it's a pure documentary,
as pure a documentary as you can get. Especially from us, like that's almost a return to like the Beast of Whitehall days. So, like we're always going to be exploring new storytelling styles, but I don't foresee myself ever being to a point where I don't want to work in documentaries at all or anything like that. So,
but if you'd like to see Small Town Monsters do a pure narrative, you can send Seth an Instagram message and just put Ape Canyon in the message.
Yeah.
Because that is, I feel like he's going to smack me in the face because I keep bringing that up.
No, I mean,
side eye right now.
I really want that very bad.
At some point, that's probably going to happen.
At some point, Adam, did you hear that?
I heard it, but I still.
Yeah, let that sink in.
I was referencing smacking upside the head, not the.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just saying it to shut me up. He wasn't talking about it.
So for Momo, I mean, has there been any pieces put together yet for production? Is that begun yet? Or are you guys still kind of in storyboard mode?
We are definitely in pre-pro on it. I'm in post-production editing on Terror in the Skies, and pre-pro on Momo begins in earnest tomorrow night, because tomorrow night we're having a sit-down meeting with Zach and Jason about picture story or picture sound. And then the producer side of things that Adrian and Adam get to handle.
The real boss, Adrian Breedlove. She's gonna.
That is true.
That's right.
Lay down the law tomorrow.
No margaritas tomorrow night, kids. Yeah, it's go time.
They'll get to like kind of start, looking into all the different. Is that more sirens?
Are you sure you're not in LA right now? What is going on?
I'm fairly certain, but it is surprising how much it seems like you're in New York City when you're in Wadsworth. But yeah, I've been working on the story side of things on my own, like I normally would do. Like I'm just sitting down and dreaming up what the film's going to look like and how everything's going to play out, and how the difference. Holy cow!
Ooh, we really got to get through that very slow moving intersection.
Yeah. The biggest thing that's an ambulance driving right by outside very slowly. The biggest thing for me on this one that's different from the others is I've actually had to sit down and do an outline of the entire movie, like a very detailed scene by scene outline, which I've never had to do, obviously, with other films, partially because by the time you shoot your interviews, your outline's out the window, because you've got all these other pieces of the puzzle coming in that you never expected to be there. So for me, I've actually had to sit down and come up with like scene by scene details of what these scenes are going to be and how they're going to play out, and then also writing things down like how many actors we need per scene, what vehicles we might need in a scene, period appropriate vehicles, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a ton of challenges associated with this one that we've never dealt with before. But at the same time, I still feel like it's going to be very much a Small Town Monsters production. You're still going to get the documentary side of what we do. It's just, I think the predominant storytelling device is going to be, a narrative. Although the way things happen with SCM, I could be eating my words, and in 2 months we're like, oh, there was 5 minutes of recreation in Momo, the Missouri Monster. But I don't think so.
Ape Canyon.
Exactly. Yep. Just keep repeating it.
When will Momo come out?
Momo will be out very early October or very late September. The premiere is going to happen at CryptidCon in Kentucky. But the actual DVD release and streaming release will take place in very early fall. And
how about On the Trail of Bigfoot?
That is March 29th, Friday, March 29th. It arrives.
And do you know yet I know the easiest way for the Kickstarter stuff is for people to go to Kickstarter.com and to just type in Small Town Monsters, but do you have any idea what an actual address might look like, or do you want to throw that out there?
No, unfortunately, the way they do things, you can't get the link until you launch the Kickstarter, which drives me insane. But it'll launch on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday the 7th of February. I don't know when you're airing this.
So if people are listening to this right this very moment, then they can go to Kickstarter right now and pick their backing level. So let's talk about some of the different things that you guys have come up with for the Kickstarter. Now, to be clear, the Kickstarter is for all three of these projects, correct?
Yeah. We started doing that back in 2017 with the Mothman and Point Pleasant Kickstarter, and it seems to work pretty well. So we just kind of lump all of the STM productions for each year into one Kickstarter. We have Terror in the Skies, On the Trail of Bigfoot, and Momo in this year. So if you back within the first 7 days of the campaign, you're going to be able to get your name in the credits of On the Trail of Bigfoot, along with the other two films. After that first 7 days, it'll just be name in the credits of the other two films. The main reason is that we have to send the movie off to production the week after the Kickstarter begins. So we've got tons of stuff in this year's. Actually, this is probably the most we've had, like, reward-wise in a campaign. There's going to be, like, a Small Town Monsters hat. There's a really rad Momo t-shirt designed by Sam Shearon. There's posters, DVDs, obviously. We have a retro lobby card set for Momo, which is going to be like an old like 1970s style lobby card set, which are these little like 5x7 still frames from the movie that are printed on like cardstock and will kind of look like something out of the 1970s, but they're going to be a still frame, from Momo the Missouri Monster. There's going to be a Momo statue that Gene St. Jean designed and sculpted, and other stuff. Like there's a level where you can back and actually get flown in to appear in one of the scenes in Momo the Missouri Monster, and other stuff. I'm racking my brain as I'm saying. Oh, one of my favorite things, actually, we found out like a few weeks ago, Santino Vitale, who did some of the animatics that are in the Bray Bird, we still had a couple of the original pencil illustrations he did for those animatics. So I got those off of him, and those are rewards in the campaign. That's cool. You can actually own some of the animated art from the Bray Road Beast. So, but there's all kinds of stuff. There's a ton of, we got Mothman stickers and all kinds of junk in there.
Is there like a level to, well, yeah, it's cool junk though. It's the most badass junk
It's the coolest junk. You're going to love this junk.
Best crap, I swear.
Yeah.
We need an area X level where you have to be blindfolded and probably have earplugs in, and we're gonna have to turn you around 3 times to get in the truck, but you can go out there. Just kidding.
You get airdropped.
Also, yeah, you have to go to jump school before you go out on that reward level, and also you get to hit Adam in the face.
Yeah,
I'm backing at that level.
Yeah, I have not even heard about this level yet.
It's a surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise for you and them.
I have one thing going for me, guys. Don't take that away from me.
Is there anything else that we need to cover specific to the Kickstarter?
No,
which is available right now, guys. Right now, Kickstarter.com.
Yeah, through March 9th. So.
Okay, through March 9th. February 7th, right now through March 9th. Okay. Are you guys doing? Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Are you guys doing that whole Facebook Live thing like you did?
That was what I was just going to say. We do like a Facebook Live launch party, and that'll start at 7 p.m. Eastern time and run probably for like 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes it runs longer until we hit a particular goal, and I'm like, okay, I got to go home and go to bed.
Right.
Because this is like, we were telling Adam, like, this is the most stressful week of my year when we launched the Kickstarter, because it's like it's make or break, and we can either make what we're trying to make and we've already announced making, or we can potentially never get to make another movie again. So like for me, this is always, and we always hit the goal. So I know I have nothing to worry about because like our supporters are awesome, but I always have like a mental breakdown the week of. So I can't wait for Monday.
So
that's when it starts.
So 7 p.m. EST is when the Facebook Live starts, or is that when the Kickstarter goes live?
It's both. Okay. The Kickstarter goes live, and we'll probably go live a little earlier than that on Facebook, but right. the Facebook Live will start around 7 p.m. Eastern time. And that'll be myself and most of the crew. Adrian will be here. We're all going to be at the office taking part in it.
All right. So that is 4 p.m. my time, which certainly means that this will air just after that goes live. So head on over to Kickstarter, guys, and see what level you might want to back at. Get your name in the credits and all the cool, great junk that they've got for you.
All that junk.
All that jazz. Well, guys, any
you can
last...
keep it in your trunk.
Oh, boy.
You don't say anything for 15 minutes, and that's what you got?
That's absolutely the most typical Duggan thing to do.
Any last words, any final words? Not to sound very dark about the whole thing, but maybe give out the Small Town Monsters address again. Find you guys on Facebook, all that good stuff.
Yeah, smalltownmonsters.com, facebook.com/smalltownmonsters. Twitter, we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Adam's on Instagram. Adam _.
Yeah, it's like _Adam_small_town_monsters.
Okay.
But is yours handle. Like Seth's, where it's SML, or do you spell it out? I can't remember.
That's on Twitter. Our Twitter is like SML Town Monsters.
No, I thought that was your Insta too. No, you're right. It's spelled out on Insta. You're right.
I think on Insta it's spelled out. But the on Insta it's actually spelled out too. So
it's like Adam, the producer of Small Town Monsters at smalltownmonsters.com. That's
literally spelled out exactly like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
creative.
Okay, well, any more diaper changing moments we need to talk about with whoops or laughter from the woods or anything creepy, or did we touch on everything?
I think we've touched on everything we possibly could have.
Good. And look,
Yeah, can I give a plug for Search the Woods really quick?
Please do.
Just like super fast, only because it's been a while. So I actually kind of met Seth, I think, a bit through Search the Woods roundabout, and so that's my site where I write. I'm a much better writer than I am talker. So I've just relaunched that website, and it's searchthewoods.com. And anybody who's just interested in kind of looking at a kind of common sense approach to the idea of Sasquatch and whatever, that it's going to be a place where I write and kind of talk, and I'd love to hear from people. And I like just have discussions. Like I think that's going to get us a long way as far as the subject goes. Yes, more talking. That's what we need to do, Adam.
Did you say the URL? Searchthewoods.com.
Searchthewoods.com.
Yeah. And for everybody out there, if you're like, I think I've heard this guy before, you have. What episode were you on, Into the Fray? Do you remember?
It was an auxiliary. I don't think I was good enough to make the actual show.
I knew that was coming.
I think I got like the B-sides.
Well, I think I've already slapped you in the face, and haven't I?
Yeah. I think I've been smacked around a good bit.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and all of you listeners, go check out the Kickstarter. See if there's any level there that might interest you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon.
Okay, kids, enjoy your margaritas without me. Yeah,
I will.
There's still time to get here.
I don't know.
We can wait.
I'll leave the house and the fin alarm's going to go off, and I'll have to come back again.
You're going to have to go back home for a while tomorrow.
Yeah. And then by that time, it's all like serious talk, so I can't have a margarita with anybody. All right. All right, boys.
We'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Duggan put it in this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.